to The Movies Made Us Do It. Hang on. Hello. And I completely screwed that up. I unmuted you, Matt, and started talking muted. What a great start to the show, everybody. Hello and welcome to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good.
That was a great start to the show. Yeah, how have you been, man? We were really struggling to find films to do for this show until this week, and then I got desperate. You went and found quite a few though. So do you want to kick us off?
Cool. I will start with The Tender Bar.
The Tender Bar. Yes, I saw this was up the other day. I was kind of tempted. Great cast.
Yeah, it's also directed by George Clooney as well.
Fantastic.
Who, he's a really good director.
He really is. Yeah, he's a very good director.
Yeah, well, I think everything he's done so far I've really, really liked. So, and he's definitely got an eye. I mean, I imagine he's just one of those actors that's just basically picked up a lot.
Yeah,
what he's been doing. He paid attention.
Mm-hmm.
So this is based on the J.R. Moorheringer's memoir.
Right.
And it stars Ben Affleck, Ty Sheridan, Daniel Ranieri, Lily Rabi or Lily Rab?
I am not sure.
I'm gonna say Rab. You don't pronounce the E, but Christopher Lloyd and Max Martini.
Christopher Lloyd's having a bit of a comeback lately, isn't he? He's popping up quite a bit.
He's. I mean, considering how sort of frail he looks, and in interviews and things, he's doing quite well.
He is.
What was it? Nobody. He was brilliant in that.
Oh God, he was fantastic. I was thoroughly enjoying Nobody before he turned up, but once he turned up, I was like, oh wow, that's just taking this to a whole new level. The scene in the retirement home with him and the assassins is just gold.
Brilliant. I mean, I honestly thought, I thought, oh no, he's just going to be sort of sat there. It's like kind of sad, and then he starts doing stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, then that's fine. I'm happy. That's brilliant.
It's amazing. Yeah, Nobody was fantastic.
He's great in this as well.
Excellent.
So this we're introduced to young JR.
Mm-hmm.
There's a continuous thing of what's JR stand for. It stands for junior. He and his mum are moving back into her father's home. So Lily Rabb plays his mother, and Christopher Lloyd plays her father. And the Christopher Lloyd's grandpa is he's this sort of sits around in his underwear farting and saying that wasn't me, and is terribly annoyed by the fact that his family keep coming back home,
right,
and annoying him, and things never seem to work out for his kids, and they're always there, which I think he secretly loves, but it's also like he hates it. He's clearly a very well educated man.
Yeah, and
then so little JR's dad is that in the movie he's just known as the voice, played by Max Martini, and he basically, as soon as the kid was born, he basically pissed off.
Yeah,
he's just not been around. So he's a radio DJ. He's literally got this really good voice, and little JR secretly listens to him, when he can, sort of thing.
Sure.
And then we've got Ben Affleck, his Uncle Charlie, who also lives at the house, who runs this bar, and he is this self-educated sort of font of knowledge, who takes young JR under his wing and sort of says, there's this one bit where he's like asks him what he wants to be, and he opens up this cupboard and he just says, just read all those, and it's just full to the brim with books. And so he learned basically all things he learns is through his uncle and the other members of the bar, who all look like they're all this sort of like bunch of reprobates, but they're all like really clever people. They all know like stuff, and they're all like they do like puzzles and things, and they've all got their little bits of advice to give young JR. So at first he's played by Daniel Ranieri. I think this is his first movie.
Right.
looks like he's been in a few other bits and pieces, but I think this is his first movie. So that you got the young is played by him, and the older, when he goes to college, is played by Ty Sheridan,
right?
Who was in Ready Player One and Mud, and oh yeah, I forgot he played Scott in X-Men Apocalypse.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
So you get these brilliant sort of little bits with the uncle and Christopher Lloyd's character. There's a wonderful bit where there's a task at school for the kids. They're told, you're going to have to make a invitation. We're going to have a father-son breakfast.
Right.
And you've got, so you make this invitation, and then you'll bring your dad in, and we'll cook breakfast, and you'll have this thing. And he basically sits there all lesson and does nothing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the lesson, he's like, I don't have a dad. And the teacher's like, what? He's like, well, I don't have a dad. He's not sort of around, and sort of thing. So he goes home. The church is like, oh, well, I'll call your mother, sort of thing. And he goes home, and he's sort of like, I can't do this thing. I've got, no dad. And Christopher Lloyd sort of says, I'll take you. And there's this brilliant bit where Christopher, you see this, he's basically in his pants and vest almost the entire time.
Right.
And he sort of goes upstairs and he gets in this amazing suit and cleans himself up and goes to take the kid into this. It's a beautiful scene. I think it's kind of a movie of two halves. I think the first half with the younger JR, I think is really good and really interesting.
Right.
When it gets to Ty Sheridan, it sort of drags a little. He sort of goes off to college and he's got sort of new friends, and he gets with this girl, and she basically uses him. She keeps sleeping with him, but after they've slept together, she sort of says, "Oh, I'm seeing someone else," and he's like, crushed. He's like completely crushed by it. But he keeps vowing to get her back, So there's no sort of. There's no real proper urgency. You don't find it. The story sort of almost peters out. It's like I want to see his friends more. I want to sort of get to know them a little bit better. You can sort of get to know one or okay, but I don't know. It sort of just loses something in the transition. And that's not to say that Ty Sheridan's a terrible actor, because he's not. It's just that for some reason. I don't know whether it's the writing or what, but when it's the younger kid, it just feels more natural and more like he has more to do. There's the story sort of runs along really sort of nicely, and everything goes it's just written and acted brilliantly. But when it gets to the next bit, it just feels a little sort of slow. It really does slow the movie right down. And whenever Ben Affleck's on screen, it's amazing. He's brilliant. He's some of the advice he gives him is like, okay, but he says to him, he says, whenever we'll play games and stuff, he says, but I'll never let you win. He says, but I'll always tell you the truth. And I think that's that's kind of what he needs. The character that he needs this sort of. I mean, it's a memoir, so I presume most of it is true.
Yeah.
And I sort of think, oh damn, I'd love to have had an uncle like that who is widely read, but and gives you really good advice, but clearly hasn't really been anywhere, or he's sort of worldly wise, but not that worldly wise, if you know what I mean. But he's amazing whenever he's on screen. And Lily Rabb is the mother, is she's trying to sort of she keeps pushing him into being a lawyer. She wants him to to grow up with a real sort of a brilliant education, and she wants him to be a lawyer. And his grandpa says, "Yeah, you can be a lawyer so that you can sue your dad for alimony." And the sort of the dad character, when he does turn up, played by Max Martini, who he's one of those actors that you've seen in shitloads of things. Usually plays soldiers.
Sure.
He's in 13 Hours and Captain Phillips and Pacific Rim. He's a sort of big dude who gruff dude. And the relationship between him and his son it's a really sort of strained relationship. There's a bit where out of the blue he just turns up, and he sort of talks. He talks to his son, and they get into the car, and he literally drives him round the block. They're talking, and then drops him off and fucks off again for God knows how many years. It's like,
right.
Jesus Christ! It's like,
yeah,
thanks for the flying visit, Dad. It's like really fucking weird. But what is great about this movie? It's brilliantly directed. I think Clooney does a great job. Again,
yeah, that he is a very strong director.
Yeah, brilliantly acted. Especially by Affleck and Rab, sorry, and the younger kid. I think he shines so much more than Ty Sheridan does. And I'm not trying to sort of blame Ty Sheridan for it. I just think it for some reason it works better with the younger version. The story seems to move a better pace, and it just feels more natural when with the younger kid. The kid is brilliant. I mean, one of the weirdest things is how he's supposed to grow up to be Ty Sheridan is another matter, because they really look nothing alike.
Sure.
I mean, the kid's got these the almost black eyes. He's got these these dark brown eyes, and Ty Sheridan's got these sort of almost blue eyes. Like he's him, really? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But whatever. I guess it's just a case of we just found this kid. He's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't care what he looks like.
Yeah, sure.
So you sort of forgive them that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really nice coming of age movie for the most part. When it gets to the older, like I said, it does peter out, and I think it could have done with a little stronger character interaction when with the older JR.
Yeah.
But overall, I think I really enjoyed it. It's a very well made coming of age movie. Yeah, I would recommend it. I think it's really nice. It's there's some really really great scenes. I would say that Ben Affleck, he's not underused, but the movie lights up more when he's there. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Whenever he's not around, it kind of slightly suffers, which I think is probably one of the main problems with the older JR bits, because he's not around. He's at college and he's not around sort of his uncle so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I must admit, I was very tempted to watch this myself, so I will probably give that a watch now. Yeah, always nice to see Christopher Lloyd in things.
Yes,
makes me happy.
Yeah, he's not in it enough, but he's great when he is.
Yeah. So, you also watched Ghostbusters. Should we talk about that? Because I'm curious what your thoughts were on Ghostbusters Afterlife. Obviously, I gave my review a couple of weeks back now. Yeah. But what did you think? How did you find it?
I loved it.
Great.
Absolutely loved it. I thought it was bloody brilliant.
I think, personally, I've given it a couple of weeks now since I watched it.
Yep.
I think I put it up there with Ghostbusters 2. Maybe even better than Ghostbusters. It feels like a better sequel than Ghostbusters 2.
I think it is. I think it's better than Ghostbusters 2.
And I enjoy Ghostbusters 2. I do.
Yeah.
I know it's flawed, but I do enjoy it. It's nowhere near as good as the first one. Neither is Afterlife. But they're both fine.
But as we said, if you're expecting Ghostbusters,
you're out of your mind. Yeah.
You're going to be very, very disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think it was it's put together beautifully.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, the overall story towards the end does become a bit.
It's a rehash.
Samey, but I actually liked what they did with it. They had some, interesting slants on how Gozer works.
I thought that the whole idea of it's funny when I saw the trailers. I thought The introduction of Gozer, it was like, oh god, that's so cheap. We're gonna go back with terror dogs and stuff. Like, but when you see it in the movie, it really works in such a way that it sets itself up as a true sequel to the first film, and it works really well.
And I love the idea that, you know, if we trap one of the terror dogs, then Gozer
she loses part of her
herself. You know, she becomes more spectral, more you know, less stable. And I love the new design. I thought it was great.
It was faithful whilst being a little bit different. You know, it was great.
Yeah, I like the whole sort of you could sort of the crackle of bones you could see underneath.
Yes,
that was really good. And Olivia Wilde didn't have to do an awful lot, but she looked amazing. She was
about
really well done.
3 people involved in bringing that performance to life, wasn't there? Because I think she only did she was just the face and the body, and then someone else did the voice, and it all came together really well, though.
Yeah, the voice was I always forget her name, and she's an Indian actress. She's got one of those names. Shoreya Agadeshlu.
Okay.
She was in she's been in fucking shitloads of things. She's got that amazing voice. But she's in The Expanse.
Yes, yeah.
She's been in 24.
She's another actress who's just kind of great in everything she's in.
Yeah,
you know, she just turns up and be like, yeah, she's great.
I mean, she was in Arcane as well. She was the voice of the head policeman in the first couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a fantastic, and the voice. She does a really good job with the voice. I liked the interactions with a lot of the things. I love the running joke of
the podcast. I did like the payoff to the podcast joke. I must admit that did make me laugh.
Yes, that was good. I mean, podcast is clearly Ray.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Clearly.
Phoebe's her her granddad.
Yeah.
Podcast is Ray.
Yeah.
They got that. That was a nice thing at the end. No, I like the running joke about whenever they say, "Oh, I'm the like Egon's granddaughter," or something, and they're all like, "Dirt Farmer had a family."
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. I think for the most part, I mean, the humor. It's not quite the same as.
I don't want it to be the same as the original,
but I think
because it's not the same people. It's a different location. It's a different situation. I loved Phoebe's attempts at humor. Made me laugh every time she told a joke that just fell completely flat. Those were quite funny.
I thought they were hilarious, but I like dad jokes. So
yeah, I love dad jokes. Yeah,
and I mean Grace McKenna completely carries this movie. She is. I mean, that sounds bad, but no. What I mean is, she's completely the focal point.
Yes,
she's not. She's amazing. Not only is she an amazing actress, everything about her character is just brilliant. I love the way she tinkers with things. She's anxious. She gets these sort of when she does release her anger, she properly releases her anger.
Yes.
And, I even like the fact that the Trevor character, the Finn, when he sort of, he completely commits himself. It's like he's been in this town for less than 5 minutes and he's completely throwing himself at this girl.
Yeah.
And what I liked is they didn't do the usual, he's going to get beaten up by the kids. They rag on him and stuff.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's it's just friendly ragging. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there was no sort of full on bullying or anything, and I thought that was really good. Paul Rudd was great in
he's great at being Paul Rudd in this movie. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Carrie Coon was amazing. I think this is one of the first comedic roles she's done. I don't think she doesn't tend to do comedy. I thought she was really funny as the parts that she had. She did quite well when she was doing the when she was possessed by Zool.
Yes, and I think as well, I thought she had a really nice character arc where she was really she was a bitch at the start of that movie. And you obviously throughout the movie realize why. I thought she was in a few scenes. I was like, God, she's just a twat.
Just has had a good life.
Yeah, exactly. But I liked that. We got to see that through the movie.
Yeah. And I mean that I call me a fool for nostalgia, but damn, the Egon stuff was fucking amazing. I loved the stuff.
His presence throughout the film was great. I really liked it when even when he wasn't physically there, he was still guiding the characters through the film.
Yeah,
I thought all of that stuff was wonderful. And how did you feel about the CGI Egon? Because I said during my review, I thought it felt touching. It didn't feel cheap or nasty like a lot of those have. It felt like it was done with love.
Yeah, it did. It felt like, it felt genuinely like a real tribute to Harold Ramis, and it was just so good when at the end when they've Phoebe's struggling with the proton pack.
Yeah, it's a wonderful moment.
He just appears sort of there.
Yeah, you get that great reveal because you just see the hand at first, and the music dips and everything. And it's like, oh my god, they're going there.
And I really like the fact that he doesn't speak.
Yes, absolutely.
I really like the they spoke to him, and the other guys were great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ray in particular, I thought was brilliant.
I mean, to be honest though, even Murray seemed to be up for it. When he was there, like he was, because I've seen Murray phone in some performances over the years, and he seemed to be genuinely up for it. He seemed to be having fun, and
they all looked like they were having a great time. They all looked like they were there to do well, and I really loved it. I mean, like you said, you can argue with some of the stuff like that. Yes, it was a kind of a rehash of the original. There were some weird moments that I thought, like with the remote control trap.
Yeah.
I just kept thinking, why didn't they just pick it up? Why are they still traveling with the trap?
Oh yeah, when it's just still driving behind them or whatever. It's like, what are you doing?
And in the end, like you said, with the big when he sets off the big trap, when they set off the big traps.
Surely this.
Why wasn't Egon sucked into that?
I know. It would have robbed us of a wonderful moment, but my brain immediately was like, how does that work? I don't understand.
I mean, you could argue that he was stood far away enough.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the argument, isn't it? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a nitpick, right?
Yeah,
because it was such a good film. I think he's wonderfully directed as well.
Yeah, Jason Reitman did a really good job. I mean, it looked great. And it did. I mean, there were times where it genuinely felt almost like an 80s movie.
I mean, the soundtrack is like it literally lifted from the original movie, which helps a lot. But you're right; it does feel very much like an 80s movie. It's in that kind of perfect setting for an 80s movie as well.
And even with the kids, the kids, it felt very much like that sort of,
And I will say, I got goosebumps as soon as the fucking Ecto 1's siren went on. I was like, oh, that bit in the police station where they just like hit the siren. I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and also when Ernie Hudson turns on the proton pack and he says, I love that sound, and it's like, yes, we do too.
Yeah,
we love that sound as well.
And interestingly enough, this movie's been delayed so bloody long now that those kids have probably grown up pretty well to where when they do another movie, they could probably be old enough to be Ghostbusters, and it'll be fine, Because that was kind of the question I had coming out of that movie. If it had come out at the time, would have been like, well, they seem a bit young to be Ghostbusters, though, surely. But I guess by the time they go into production with another one, if they go down that route, I'm guessing they will. Then they will kind of be old enough. Certainly Paul Rudd, obviously, if Paul Rudd became one, that works. But the rest of them too, it feels like they're probably going to be old enough.
Yeah, I think you'll probably. I mean, I can't imagine Bill Murray coming back. Not in a big capacity, anyway.
No, I kind of feel like you might get him in like an advert or something. But certainly, I think we'll get Ray and Winston. Winston's obviously going to be in it because he's pretty much financing all of it, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He's backing it. The scene with Sigourney Weaver and
that made me laugh. I didn't want to say about that because
laugh, but it did feel a little weird.
It was like, the weirdest part is that they announce her in the credits, and you're like, she wasn't in it, and then immediately after she shows up. You're like, oh, okay.
That's
like,
exactly what my wife said.
That's why I didn't say it.
She said, "Where the hell was Sigourney Weaver? I didn't see Sigourney Weaver."
And then she is.
And I remembered that somebody said she's in the cutscene at the end. I was like, I think it's coming.
Yeah, it's like immediately after her name. You're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. It starts up straight after her name. It's like, that's fucking weird.
And that's why I didn't want to say anything to you about that, because I had that reaction was like, what? Did I miss her? And then it was like, oh no, there she is. But it is a fun scene as well. It's a fun scene, getting back at
Yeah, and I mean, you could definitely accuse it of nostalgia bait, because it totally is.
Oh,
but
the last 20 minutes for sure, and there are nostalgic moments. The last 20 minutes is just pure like, hey, remember the first film? We're just doing that again.
I think the worst nostalgia baiting is the Stay Puft thingies.
I still don't like them. I know a lot of people like them. I'm in the minority there, but
they're really cute.
They are,
but I'd rather they didn't.
Yeah,
I think it.
How is the Stay Puft Company even still going after New York?
After the giant Stay Puft.
I mean, isn't that the end of your company? You'd at least change the logo and change the mascot, right? I mean, come on.
I guess so. Yeah, I never really thought about that.
You're tanked as a company after that, surely. I mean, it's not their fault at all, but how do you explain that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it looks like most people have forgotten it, so.
Yeah, that was a bit weird. That's like, I'm pretty sure everyone would talk about that forever. Like, you're not going to get over the time a giant marshmallow man stomped through New York.
No.
Or the fact that ghosts were in New York. I guess maybe it was like, oh, hey, that was all just, nonsense, and people just bought into hysteria, and, they were con artists or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of like the scale of the first film makes it very difficult to then be like, oh no, none of that happened. It's like,
well, I mean,
really?
and then you think of the second movie when they got the fucking Statue of Liberty moved.
Well, yeah, I couldn't quite decide whether the second movie. I guess the second movie must be.
Yes, they mention something that happened in the second one.
Oh, do they? Okay, maybe they do.
Also,
the gear is definitely from Ghostbusters 2. So
yeah, they also had the toaster from 2 was in the kitchen. Yeah. There was a few bits and pieces in Egon's house that was from the second movie.
Yeah.
So, and I think they've
what wonderful set design that house was as well. That's like full of Easter eggs. It's like, God, they really thought about everything in this house.
My wife looked at me and said, "You want to live there, don't you?" And totally. I absolutely want to live there. Because it was brilliant. I mean, completely falling apart, but I love it. It's great. It's and I love the whole vertically stacked books.
Yeah.
That just lovely little bits and pieces that I thought were great. I thought all the kids were great. I think I don't remember what her name
Finn had the least to do. I felt
he did.
He I could have lost him.
Lucky was underused the most.
Yes,
but I think it was more that this was Phoebe's story anyway.
Yeah.
And podcast I thought was great.
He's fine. I got some shit for that, by the way.
I know. I saw.
I love you, whoever you are. But who the hell watches 100 reviews of a film? But anyway, no. I was not suggesting the actor was bad. In fact, quite the opposite. I thought he was fantastic. I just felt like he didn't have enough to do for me, and I
thought he was just the right amount of annoying.
Oh, sure, yeah. I just felt like I could have done with more from him, like more of a story. And I guess if hopefully we'll get him in the sequel and we'll get to see more of him. That'd be good.
Yeah. I think hopefully if all four of them.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think I'd be more than happy.
The love story felt pretty flat as well between Finn and what's her name. That didn't quite work for me.
Do you mean between between Finn and Lucky?
Yeah. Like they didn't really, it was like, okay. Like barely went anywhere.
Yeah, it was, I mean, like you said, it was because they didn't give him enough to do, really.
That's the thing, yeah. It almost felt like you could have done the whole movie without the other kids and just have the one, just have the granddaughter, and it would have worked.
I think it's a 2-hour movie, and I think that if they put more of them in, it probably would have been in danger of
Yeah,
balancing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is the thing, right? We've got a solid movie. And now we can get to know these characters in the sequel, hopefully. Because I'm all for a sequel after this. I never thought I'd be saying
completely.
that. But
Completely.
100%. Goosebumps again when you know, at the end, you just see Ecto driving across the bridge to New York, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
The soundtrack comes in, it's like, oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is, you know, if you don't like the first Ghostbusters, then there is no point watching this movie.
No, absolutely not.
So I can, you know, like, you know, the whole nostalgia baiting thing. You know, it's a real thing. It's not. I mean, I can't disagree with it. Yeah. However, I think it's a great movie. It's
absolutely.
I think there's enough in it that, you know, it stands not apart from the first one, but it stands on its own merit. I think with the characters they have.
Well, and I think the fact that they crafted a sequel around the Gozer story.
Yeah,
it feels like a true sequel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
Where Ghostbusters 2 felt like, oh, we just need to continue with more Ghostbusters. This felt like, hey, let's go back and revisit the story, and what could we do with this? Because it's a god, you know. It's like, okay, cool, yeah, this makes sense.
And I did notice when they were looking at the on the wall with the numbers.
Yes.
The dates. There were dates later.
There are. Yes, there are. Yeah.
You know, chances are Gozer's coming back again anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love the very brief J.K. Simmons.
I laughed out loud at that. That was hilarious.
That was really funny, and I love the whole idea that this guy has spent probably his life.
Yeah, well, he built the tower, right, as well. And then this whole town and everything else, and then he just 1 second after waking up.
Yeah,
brilliant,
absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I mean, yeah, brilliant. I loved it. Thought it was great.
Excellent.
I'm slightly disappointed I didn't go to the cinema to see it, but
yeah, me too, actually.
I think overall it was a real fun, really brilliantly crafted characters. This
is how you pass the baton.
Yeah,
this is a good. You've done it well.
I mean, yeah, there's this completely whitewashes the 2016 one. It's like, what 2016 one? I don't remember there being a 2016 one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a far better film. Let's be honest. It's just far more original. It's far better crafted in every way. Better acted as well. It's like a thing now.
It's got genuinely likable characters.
Well, it's got likable characters, and also it's got, I don't know. We're in this weird thing now where I films from like, the 30s and whatnot, up to like films in the 90s and 2000s. Child actors, you get occasional really good ones, but most of them really ropey. Nowadays, like, the child actors are just out acting the adults in everything they're in.
We've said this a number of times. The latest child actors are just so much better than they used to be.
They're incredible. Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, maybe it's just that they're taught better, or,
probably.
Because I think that I like to think that it's got better for them as well, because a lot of those kid actors, they did not have great careers or lives,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to think that it's just they're prepared a little better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's so many great fucking kid actors right now.
Mm. But yeah, a really, really good sequel. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I always worry when I'm like, hey, this was really fun. It's like, well, if Matt hates it, then I've just wasted his time.
No, I mean, even if it was, I thought it was terrible, I was going to, you're going to have to watch it anyways.
Yeah, that's true. So,
but no, genuinely funny movie. There's lovely little bits in it. And there's some genuinely sweet little moments between, I love at the very beginning when, the mum's cutting his hair and she cuts his ear and stuff. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
They're poor. She's cutting his hair. It's great. Just little
works.
things like that were fantastic. Yeah, great film.
So, what else have you been watching?
Let us go with let's go with Mother Android.
Yes, a film that I've been very tempted to watch, mainly because of the actress, more than anything else. But yeah, so it looks fun. It's like a post-apocalyptic kind of deal.
Yeah. So, first of all, what a fucking awful name.
Yes, terrible name.
They could not have come up with a better name than Mother Android, for fuck's sake.
Apparently not.
Jesus. Anyway, so we are introduced to Georgia and Sam, and so played by Chloe Grace Moretz and Algie Smith. It's directed by Matson Tomlin, which I don't know whether he's done anything else. Terminator writer.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that can't be.
Which
TV
Terminator?
series.
How old is he? Oh,
it says TV series, but I don't one episode, so maybe the show. I don't know.
The Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Project Power. Okay, so he looks like he's written a few things. Anyway, so so we're introduced to Georgia and Sam, and they're at a Christmas party, and Georgia or they're about to go to a Christmas party, I should say, and they're in the bathroom, and Georgia has just taken a bunch of pregnancy tests, which are all positive, and they're clearly not a completely stable couple. They she's not sure whether she wants to keep it. She's not, and he's like, well, you marry me, and she's like, this can't be serious. This is, I don't know what to do about this. So anyway, they go to this the party, and there are androids everywhere. They've got android servants, and the first sign you get that something's not quite right is when they're leaving the house. One of the androids says, "Happy Halloween" to him, and he's like, "It's not Halloween, it's Christmas." He's like, "Yep, okay, my mistake," sort of thing. Like, okay. So then they go to this thing, and while they're at this party, and they're she's talking to one of her friends about the pregnancy, and basically, this high-pitched scream goes off on the phone, and then all the lights go out, and all of a sudden there's screaming and explosions, and basically all the androids have gone ape shit, and they start attacking their owners, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get it's a few months later, and they're sort of camping in the middle of nowhere. Georgia is very heavily pregnant.
Yes.
And they are trying to get to Boston because they've been told that Korea is safe. If they can get a boat to from Boston to Korea, then they can have a sort of a better life there. So there's some nice scenes between Chloe and Algie Smith, but there is some fucking dumb decisions in this movie. One thing I will say is it's a sort of nice idea. I think most people will probably go into this movie expecting a sort of full-on, android uprising movie. It's not really that, although it is, but it's not about that. It's more to do with these two characters and the new life that they're bringing into this world.
Yeah.
So it's more about that than it is about the actual uprising itself.
Yeah.
But it drags. It really, really drags. There's lots of sort of scenes where you just think, oh, for fuck's sake, can something happen now? This is really just far too long. Mm-hmm. But there are some really nice scenes, with them when they're talking about what's going on and that. But then just they get to this camp, which is mostly seems to be full of soldiers who were full on gung ho meatheads who they're there to destroy the things, and they want to. And while Georgia is seeing this doctor, and this doctor's saying, you can stay here, have the child here. He talks to this soldier, this young kiddie, this soldier, and he says to him, he asks for a cigarette, I think it is, and then he basically says no. And they're talking, and this kid basically, bloke says to him, I don't appreciate people coming here and not, fighting, wanting to run away and all that sort of stuff, right?
Right.
And then he goes back to Georgia, and they're talking about, what's going to happen. And they come up with this. They said, maybe we should stay here, have the baby here, and then move on later. He then goes to talk to this dude again and asks him if he can sneak him onto a boat. And it's like, why would you go to the guy that's you've already talked to and has already been a dick to you? Why would you go back to that character? Surely there are other people that you can try, talk to. Anyway, it ends badly. They get thrown out. Slight spoiler, but it ends badly. They get thrown out because basically this kid says, I keep calling him a kid. He's not a kid. He's a bloke.
Yeah.
If you want to do something, you can fight me, right? So they fight. You don't see the fight. It cuts to the next day, and apparently he beat this soldier to a pulp.
Right.
And you do sort of think, well, how? Because the other dude was way bigger than him.
And trained, presumably.
Sorry?
And trained if he was a soldier.
Yeah, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? I mean, they're obviously younger soldiers.
I guess, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Trained.
Yeah.
But, it's supposed to establish that this kid can handle himself.
Sure. Yeah. He's
which is fine. But basically the sort of colonel at this camp's like, he's beating my soldiers up, like he attacked my soldier and all. It's like, really? You really believe that bullshit? He gets completely blamed for it, and like the other bloke didn't do anything, and it just feels really silly. And he's like, no, you've got to leave this camp within the hour. Don't. And if you're lucky, I don't phone other camps and tell them, not to fucking let you in. It's like, fuck off, you dick. Anyway, they go off. They meet this. They go off. They do. There's just so many silly decisions that you just think, fucks. Why are you doing this? They get a bike and they come across this other guy, played by Raul Castillo, who is like he's the Sam gets captured by the androids and taken off, and she meets up with this Arthur character who says he worked for the company that made the androids, and he's been working on this suit that makes you invisible to the androids. Right. I'm not gonna go into spoilers, but I think that stuff happens that you're like, well, I can see that fucking coming a mile off. But it's not a great movie.
That's a shame.
It's directed fine. It's not bad. Chloe Grace Moretz is great.
She's always great.
Yeah, exactly. As usual, she's great. It mostly hinges on her performance. Algie Smith is fine. I think it's mostly to do with the writing that his character is more annoying than him. The ending I thought was okay. What happens at the end is it's an interesting end. I'm not going to spoil it, so I can't say too much. But I thought it was fine. The end was okay. I mean, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
The worst,
just average.
Yeah, it's not the worst version of this story. We've seen this. We've seen this in multiple, uprising stories. It was fine. It's just not interesting. There's a lot of very dull moments that drag on too long. Yeah, it was just boring. I mean, there's, like I said, some of the performances were good. She was great, but I would say skip it. Honestly,
Then I shall.
Yeah,
I was only tempted because I was like, it looks okay, but I wasn't sure, to be honest. So
if you're really desperate, then fine. But
wow,
I personally say skip it. It's not great.
Yeah, that's a shame. But speaking of desperate, I can tell you what I watched this week.
What did you watch
this week? So I was like you. I was really struggling to find something to watch.
Did you finally finish Raccoon City?
No, I didn't. I might have done something even worse, actually. I watched The Matrix Resurrections.
Oh, dude.
Wow. The thing is, I was like, I need something to watch.
So I didn't have to.
I've had this. Full disclosure, I have had. My housemate gave me a copy of The Matrix Resurrections and Welcome to Raccoon City. I think it was before Christmas, and I've just avoided watching either. But this week it was like, I need something to watch. It was like Monday, and I still hadn't watched anything. And then last night I was like, I really need to find something to watch. And I saw it there. I was like, oh, do you know what? I've got it. I'll just watch it. And see what I thought of it. So I guess full disclosure. I think the first Matrix film is great. I think the sequels are garbage. And I actually liked them even less on rewatching them. Because when The Matrix Resurrections was announced, I was like, I'm going to go back and watch the original movies because the trailer for Matrix Resurrections actually looked pretty good. I thought the teasers and the build-up to it, actually, it's one of those films where it was like, it looked great with the first teaser, and then everything they showed you subsequently just made it look worse and worse.
Honestly, I saw the trailer and just thought, John Wick must be out soon. That's the only thought I had.
Yeah, it did look like Keanu couldn't even be bothered to cut his hair for the role. It was like, no, sod it. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the sequels. I think there are elements of the sequels I like. I think we've both talked about like the Merovingian being a cool character before, and there's like cool moments. But as a whole, I didn't like the sequels at all. I thought they were really dumb.
I watched it relatively recently with my wife because she wanted to watch them all again.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciated them a little more this time, actually.
It's weird. We went opposite directions with that, didn't we?
Yeah, I still don't think they're good movies.
No, I still think the first one's great. I really like the first one.
The first one is fucking brilliant. The first one still holds up. The first one is fantastic. The second two, I mean, there was a lot of fucking shit in those movies.
Yeah.
There was some, I mean, that fucking dance thing.
Yeah.
I left the room at that point and did some washing or something. I had to do, but the rest of it, it's got some nice ideas in it. There's some nice scenes in them, and I did enjoy them more this time round. But
that was the problem with those sequels is you see Zion, and then you're like, oh, what's his name was right. Let's just stay in the Matrix. It's way better in there. Like, crap. Yeah. Let's just stay in the Matrix, guys.
Yeah, is it Cypher?
Cypher, that's it. Yeah, it's like, he was right. He's just there eating a fancy steak. That's the way to live.
Just put me back in. Give me a good life back in now.
Yeah, happy days. Okay, but I'll be a battery. Just give me a good life. This is a sequel to all three. I was kind of hoping they wouldn't do that. I was kind of hoping they'd just if they were going to do a sequel, do it to the first one. Although I still think it never needed a sequel. The first one had the perfect ending, and it should have stayed there. But basically, we pick up with Neo, now Thomas Anderson, who is a video game developer and creator of The Matrix, the video game The Matrix.
Yeah, this just all sounded so bad.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So he has created The Matrix. It's a very popular series of video games. He's like, world famous for The Matrix. Famous video game developer. He meets Tiffany at the coffee shop, who is Trinity. And they kind of have a moment where they're like, I feel like we met before. I'm not sure.
I know you.
I know you vaguely. But basically, he is constantly taking blue pills. His therapist is prescribing blue pills to him. So he keeps, he's kind of stuck in the Matrix. He's made a modal, a programming sandbox, where he plays with his video game characters. And at the start of the movie, we see Bugs, one of the new characters. She finds this instance of the Matrix running, which is basically this modal, and it's reenacting the opening of the first movie. And it feels very movie-ish watching it. It's weird. But basically, she discovers a character in there. I don't know why, but apparently Neo, in his subconscious, has created a character that embodies both Agent Smith and Morpheus at the same time, even though they were like literally opposing characters and personalities. For some reason, they're morphed together. Bugs finds...
hang on, sorry. They've amalgamated Smith and Morpheus?
Neo has amalgamated Smith and Morpheus subconsciously in this version of the Matrix somewhere else. It's like this little sandbox that he's created subconsciously.
I suppose you could argue that they both made him who he is?
Yeah, you could argue that. Fair point. You could argue that. Sip of tea. Sorry, just had to get a sip of tea. So anyway, we get this moment where he goes in as an agent and he's gonna take out Trinity, and you get a remake of the first movie with the no lieutenant, your officers are already dead, all of that. But then he finds Bugs and ends up kind of breaking out of his programming because the Morpheus bit takes over, and he's like, I don't understand what's going on. He's like, I should kill you, but then at the same time I know that I'm meant to be Morpheus. And she's immediately like, oh my god, you're Morpheus, great, I'll just trust you. And then he's Morpheus for the rest of the movie, but he's not really Morpheus. So his Yaya kind of not even, it doesn't even feel like he's doing a Morpheus impression, to be honest. He just feels like a completely different character that they've decided to call Morpheus.
Right.
And I guess the closest he comes to being Morpheus is that he dresses like a twat half the time. But then even Morpheus didn't do that. He did it like once or twice. He had like outlandish outfits, but generally he was like pretty, he just looked like everyone else in the Matrix, right? But yeah, so they've got this version of Morpheus, and so it turns out that the peace happened, right? So there was peace between the machines and humans after the final Matrix, the final in the trilogy of Matrix films. The deal was that Neo fought Smith, and then there was peace between the machines. So that happened, and machines and people living in harmony. But then there was a splinter cell of the machines that refused to do that. So they've kept a new version of the Matrix going. So we've got machines working with humans, and then we've got the other machines that are still using humans to run the Matrix and create power, right? The battery thing.
Yeah.
So we get this really stupid plot that basically there's a new architect, right?
Yeah.
I can't think what he's called in the movie, but he's basically the new architect. Oh, the analyst. That's it. He's the analyst, played by Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris, yeah.
Who I like, actually. I like Neil Patrick Harris quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so he's in charge of this new Matrix, right? And he realized that for reasons unknown, Neo and Trinity, their love, as long as they're kept close but apart, for reasons, generates more power. So they went to great lengths to resurrect Neo as a human and resurrect Trinity as a human to keep them plugged in the Matrix, but they had to be kept separate. So Trinity is now a new person called Tiffany, and she's got a family, and Neo is Thomas Anderson, the video game developer, and we learned that Neo's tried to escape a few times. He's tried to like break his programming a few times, and every time they bring him back. And the analyst is basically in Thomas Anderson's life he's basically his therapist. So he's the one giving him the blue pills, and he's talking about all of these fantasies, and it's like, these crazy fantasies that you have. But obviously they find Neo and break him out. It turns out that Neo doesn't look like Neo anymore. He doesn't look like Keanu Reeves to everyone else. He looks like some old dude. So that's why they couldn't find him. Even though you'd be like, it's kind of obvious, it's probably the bloke who came up with and wrote the Matrix video game is probably the guy who knows a lot about the Matrix. But whatever. Whatever. So they free Neo for the Matrix, and he immediately, upon being freed, sees Trinity in the pod opposite, and he's like, I want to rescue Trinity. And everyone's like, yes, we should, except for Niobe, who's back from the sequel films, who's now like 100 years old or something. She's now in command, and she's like, no, you can't do that because you'll risk all of our lives to do that. And basically, I think the only original thing that this movie really accomplishes ultimately is a love story. And unfortunately, that love story, my issues with the sequels aside, the one thing all of those three movies did very well was the love story between Neo and Trinity. That love story has been done far better already. This movie, retreading that love story, accomplishes absolutely nothing. And my God, is this film like self-referential, like to the point of ridiculousness. It's like they're basically pointing at the screen.
From what I heard, that they basically make comments on terrible sequels.
They make comments on terrible sequels. They make comments. Oh, right. So the Matrix video game, right? Literally in the movie, the Matrix video game is owned by Warner Brothers, and they literally have a conversation, a board meeting, where they're like, Warner Brothers have told us they're making this video game with or without us. We have to make this video game. We've got no choice.
To me, sounds clearly like what's actually happened.
Well, it is, because we've now learned. It sounds like the Wachowskis were told, we're going to make a Matrix movie with or without you. So Lana decided to make it. I personally think, rather than making this protest of a movie, she would have been better off just saying, go do it, and we'll just disown it. And then your terrible movie will stand on its own without us, I
think maybe that was why only Lana came back.
It might be. It might be. I forget the name of the other Wachowski, but Lana's the only one that's returned here. Lily? Is it Lily? Lily. So Lily didn't return, Lana did. But yeah, that, and they also make fun of, they do weird things like in the opening, the early parts of the movie when they're talking about making this new video game, they have this board meeting moment and they're all talking about ideas, and they're like, oh, the Matrix is all about spectacle, it's all bullet time, and they're making fun of bullet time. But then a massive part of this movie is the analyst talking about how cool it is to have bullet time and how he does bullet time all the. It's like, are you trying to make fun of it, or are you trying to make it a key plot point in your movie? Like, what way do you want to go with this?
It does sound like she tried to tank it on purpose.
She succeeded. We can now officially say she absolutely succeeded. It's completely bombed, and there is absolutely no plans to make a sequel right now. So she succeeded in that. I just think she would have been. A couple of
years, and they'll just completely reboot it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Use new people and move on.
Yeah.
Which maybe is what they should have done anyway.
Well, it is. It's really odd. You've recast a bunch of characters that really. Like I said, Yahya doesn't really. He's not Morpheus. He's this avatar of Morpheus. But he doesn't behave like Morpheus at all, really. We get loads of footage of previous movies. Like half of this film, it feels like, is just showing you clips from the previous Matrix films. So Lawrence Fishburne's in it loads. Just is like archive footage of Morpheus everywhere.
Yeah, I think I understand that. I mean.
Oh, so they say at one point, Yahya's Morpheus is like, hey, I thought you might like, it might help you, realize, because obviously the idea is that the analyst has been feeding him blue pills for so long that Neo thinks he's crazy. So so basically Yaya's like, oh well, because they try once and he's like, no, this is me being mental, this isn't real. So later Yaya's Morpheus is like, oh, I thought by showing you footage of your video game it might help you realize that it's all true. And basically they're showing footage of Lawrence Fishburne and stuff, but they're like, oh yeah, that's the video game footage. But it's like, well, it's not though, is it? Because it's clearly film footage from the Matrix movie. Like, okay.
Also, if he's been making these games, how is showing him what he's made gonna help him?
Yeah, you'd think
he made them, right?
Well, they're making the argument that hey, this was real life, but here's footage of this, you know. So we also have a recasted Smith, Jonathan Groff as Smith.
Yeah, I've heard he's terrible.
Awful, absolutely awful. I mean, you're gonna struggle to follow Hugo Weaving in anything.
Yeah.
But Mr. Smith, particularly in that first movie, I mean, iconic character. This feels like some awful caricature. It's absolutely dreadful. He's not even again half the time he's not even acting like Smith, like Agent Smith. It's bizarre.
The thing about Hugo Weaving's character is he's so over the top.
Yeah.
That he manages it. Anybody else trying to do that character in the same way that he does it is gonna struggle.
Oh, there is a shot in this movie where Jonathan Groff literally is screaming, "Mr. Anderson," and it is one of the cringiest moments of films that I've watched in a long time. It's terrible. But yeah, it's just a nothing of a movie. It's a rehash of sorts, where it's like, oh hey, we've got to save people from the Matrix again. The Matrix is back, except this time you've got some robot characters helping the humans, but it is effectively the same movie again. We don't. Neo is not the one. Neo and Trinity are the two.
I did hear that.
So
at least they didn't do what we all thought they were going to do, which was make Trinity the one and Neo nothing.
No, Neo still has. He is still the one.
Yeah, at least they didn't do that.
He can't do a lot of what he used to do. So he's got some powers, but he can't fly. He can't do things like that. But then by the end of the movie,
because that was all that was the main problem they had with the sequels in the first place.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm bloody glad.
Flying off, for fuck's sake.
I'm really glad that they got rid of the flying, because it's fucking terrible. But again, the perfect way to end a movie without a sequel. The end of the Matrix when he flies away is like, great, he can do anything now. He's gonna go free everyone. Perfect.
Yeah.
When you do a sequel, it's the Back to the Future Part 2 problem. It's like, oh shit, we've got Jennifer in the car. Fuck. What do we do? I guess we'll just knock her out for the whole movie, because we weren't planning on having her there, but we wrote it in. It's kind of what they did here, because it wasn't meant to have a sequel, and now you've got a sequel. So yeah, I'm kind of glad they did that. Trinity is the one that flies first. He can't fly, and she flies first and shows him, and then later on they both can fly. But so the idea is that it's not the one; it's both of them that works together. I
mean, I think that's a nice idea.
It is a nice idea, and it kind of works in the Matrix, because in the previous movies, like, Trinity was getting premonitions, and she was the one that really made Neo the one, by kind of, because he never believed he was the one, and he even says in this movie, I never believed I was the one. It was Trinity that made me believe I was the one, that convinced me that I was the one. Which does work with the previous movies. And I will say, the first act of this film, I was like, this isn't great, but it's not as bad as I'd heard. I was like, I'm kind of intrigued. It's very self-referential, and I'm not keen on that, but I like the idea that, I like this idea of, like, Neo is kind of stuck in this version of the Matrix again, and they've given him this new persona and hidden him from everyone else, and that he's kind of struggling with his sanity, and is this reality, is it not, is it just me being crazy? There were some interesting things in that first act, and I was thinking like, maybe people have been a bit harsh, but the last two acts are terrible.
Yeah,
absolutely terrible. And again, there are some moments, there are some nice moments.
I've seen a clip of the Merovingians, like a homeless dude or something.
He's one of the few characters I like from the sequels. I was happy to see him. That was kind of funny. So like basically he's like from the old system, but they bring him in. I think the analyst brings him in, if I remember rightly, to kill Neo and co. Basically because like he wants revenge, because basically Neo making peace with the robots basically stripped him of all purpose. So he's like a homeless guy now.
Yeah.
Because there was no need to traffic information anymore, I guess. So that was kind of fun. You know, there are a few moments, but overall, it's really, really bad. That it feels like a protest movie for a lot of it. To be honest,
that's what it sounds like.
You know, and I guess the protest worked because it has bombed horribly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I cannot recommend this one, I'm afraid. You may love it if you're a big Matrix fan, because I should preface that. I am not the biggest Matrix fan. I thought the first one was great, and I didn't like either sequel. So put me in that camp, and you may well enjoy this movie more than I did.
Honestly, I think I'll skip it, I think.
I wouldn't have watched it were I not desperate for something to watch this week.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah.
She's in it. Who's Christina?
Oh, I think she's one of the I think she's just an executive. I think she just works at the video game company. She's not in it very much.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I honestly, unfortunately, cannot recommend this one. Not that that's a surprise to anyone. I would, you know. But yeah, like I said, it does have a few moments, but for the most part, I thought this was awful. Some of the CG looks great, and some of it looks terrible as well, which is really odd. Really, really odd. The train scene in particular, if you ever see that, it looks absolutely awful. Like really bad. But then other stuff looks great. It's weird. It's all over the shop visually, I thought. But yeah, so that was The Matrix Resurrections. I cannot recommend it, unfortunately. I thought the story was a dreadful rehash, really. And like I said, the main point of the movie is the love story between Neo and Trinity, and it's like, we've done that. We did that. There's no need for any more. But yeah, so that was that. Anyway, what else?
I honestly didn't, you know, I understand why they made the sequel if that's, you know, it was a case of we're going to do it anyway.
Well, I can tell you honestly, after watching the movie and seeing that scene in particular, like, I mean, if you can, try and find that scene, because that, like, there's no way that wasn't referencing exactly what happened in real life.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Like, it feels like that Lana was, I guess maybe, like, you know, they went to Lily and Lana and said, look, you know, we're going to make a Matrix sequel with or without you. And Lily was just like, fuck off, go ahead. I don't give a shit. Whereas Lana obviously took it a lot more personal. It was like, well, then I'll make it, but I'm going to make it terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very meta to the point of just poking fun at itself, really. It's weird. But yes. So what else have you watched anyway?
So I watched The House.
The House, yes, indeed.
So this is a Netflix. It says it's a TV series. It's not a TV series. It's a 3-sectioned movie. So it's animated, all stop motion.
Yeah.
Animation, and it's 3 stories about this house in different sort of time periods with different people, and it's I think it's all written by Enda Walsh. It's directed by different. I think each section's directed by a different person. The cast list is amazing. You've got Matthew Good, you've got Paul Kaye, Helena Bonham Carter, Maya Goth, Susan Wokoma, Miranda Richardson, Mark Heap, and amazingly, in the second story, the main character is voiced by Jarvis Cocker, which is really weird hearing Jarvis Cocker portray this character.
Yeah.
So the first story is it's basically set in the Victorian times, and we have this mother and father and their two little girls. One's a newborn, and the other is this little 6-year-old called Mabel. And they the cottage is I think it's a beautiful little cottage, but they're visited by family members who are clearly incredibly rich, and they look down on them and say, oh, your father gambled away all his money, and you would, this is a terrible hovel that you're living in, and all that sort of stuff. Which infuriates, I think his name's Raymond. Which makes him furious, and when they've gone, he gets drunk. He gets drunk, and he goes for a walk out into the woods. And while he's relieving himself, from out of nowhere, this sedan chair appears, with nobody seems to be pulling it or carrying it. It just appears, and the door opens, and a sort of you don't quite see who's in there, not properly,
right?
And he's beckoned in, and he goes in, and you see him. You can see him make it. You can just about make out this figure of this sort of this sort of bald guy with long hair at the bottom. The sort of bald top with the. And
dude, one moment. When we said the house 2022, and I was like, I cannot find pictures of the house 2022.
Yes.
I now need to ask you a question before we continue with this review.
Yes.
Does it star mice?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just checking, because I was like, have I got completely the wrong image up here?
No,
okay, cool.
That's the second story.
Oh, okay, because I was listening to what you were saying. I was like, this sounds completely different. Okay, cool. Continue.
Yeah. So basically, he's talking to this thing. He then goes home, and he's ravenous, and he eats all this food, and then he tells his wife that he's made this deal with this guy, and he needs to talk about it later. But then he basically passes out.
Right.
And this character, played by Mark Heap, turns up the next day, called Mr. Thomas, and he says, my employer, you make this deal with my employer, and he's agreed to make this house for you. So this house will be up on that hill over there, sort of thing. You will have to leave this house and just move straight away as soon as it's built. And everything you want will be catered for, but you have to make a decision now. He's not very patient. You have to say whether you want it now. So they agree. They sign the deal, and then they watch as this house is built upon this thing. And as soon as it's finished, they move in. And little Mabel is slightly upset by this. She's happy where she is. She doesn't want to move into this big house. Also, she's got this doll's house which looks suspiciously like the house that's built.
Right.
So they move into this massive house, and they're told, everything they want will be catered for. That food will be provided. That you don't have to do anything. And slowly, the parents become a bit weird, and they sort of get a bit obsessed by the wife starts obsessingly making sort of curtains with this sewing machine, and the father keeps obsessing about the fireplace.
Okay.
And they sort of kind of neglect the little baby, and Mabel starts looking after the baby, and they move it around. and she goes to bed one night, and when she wakes up, she's past this room at one point, and there's a workman in it who just stops working and stares at her,
Right.
and then she says hello, but he doesn't answer, and she moves on. And then the next day when she wakes up, she looks out of the window, which overlooked, she could see the cottage in the distance, sort of thing. Now there's another room there, and there are workmen in it.
Okay.
And rooms keep getting moved around, and the stairway gets removed, and her parents are becoming increasingly weird, and they're given these new sets of clothes to wear, which look suspiciously like upholstery.
Okay.
And meanwhile, poor little Mabel, she's struggling to look after this little girl, and she's struggling to find, meaning in what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And she sees that they've pulled down the cottage. The cottage gets pulled down, but it gets recreated in the basement of this house. She goes down there at one point, and this house is there. This cottage is fully remade in the bottom, and you keep seeing this guy who's the employer, and he's just this weird giggling presence, and it's really fucking creepy. And I'm not going to spoil the end of the story, but it is fucking weird and very, very creepy.
Okay.
And I loved it. It's beautifully, beautifully made.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about it, I must admit.
Yeah, the animation is fantastic. The second story is it's now in the sort of the modern day, and we are introduced to Jarvis Cocker's character, who's just called the Developer.
Right.
And he is redeveloping the house, and he's sort of living in the basement while he's doing it, and he keeps talking to someone who you presume is his girlfriend, and he's also talking to the bank. He's clearly got no money left, and he's struggling to sort of to make everything sort of come out on top. He keeps promising the bank that everything's fine. He's got nibbles there, he's got people that are interested. He's going to sell this house, and then he discovers that he has an infestation of fur bugs.
Right.
And he basically, he grabs the whole house, and he puts all this stuff down and kills all the bugs, and then he goes sort of like, you see him, he sort of goes up the stairs or goes down the stairs, I forget which. As he's going down the stairs, the screen cuts. The screen goes through the floorboards as he's going through the down the stairs, and you can see that the whole floor is completely infested,
right,
with these bugs. He's still got these bugs, and he then has this open house, and all these people turn up, and they're clearly not bloody interested. And he has this amazing sort of like this patter about things keep going wrong. He ordered canapes to feed them, and basically he gets the wrong shopping. He ends up with noodles and hot dogs and nothing else. So he tries to make the most of it, and he's made these horrible looking sort of canapes out of hot dogs and noodles and things. And he's sort of saying you can do the lighting with your phone, and this marble is from Italy, and this marble's from Romania or something. And clearly these people are wandering off. And then these two giantly, weirdly proportioned rats turn up, and they say they're interested in the house. And again, I am not going to spoil where this goes, but again, it's fucking weird and creepy. I will say there's a song and dance part in this story with the bugs.
Right.
It's fucking weird and amazingly animated. It's really funny. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna spoil how that ends, but That's the second story, and then the third story is I'm guessing it's the future. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
It could even be that because each story. So you've got humans in the first story, you've got rats in the or mice in the second story, and in the third story they're cats.
Right.
And I'm not sure whether they're in different dimensions or whether it just maybe they're not rats, they're just represented that way. I'm not quite sure. But the third story, the house is now basically on a completely flooded plain. It's sort of on its own in the middle of this sort of like rapidly rising water. You can see the tops of like church spires in the distance and a couple of roofs, and there are like floating cars and things. But for the most part, all it is just water and this house. And you're introduced to Susan Wakoma's character Rosa, who is this. She's got this house, and she's desperately trying to, make something of this house. She's got a sign in the front that says, apartments, to rent, and she has two tenants. I think it's Elias, played by Will Sharp, and Jen, played by Helena Bonham Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Elias seems to be this sort of like slightly sort of wastrel type who sort of seems a bit lost. And he pays her with fish, not with money.
Right.
And Jen, played by Helena Bonham Carter, is this sort of hippie type who's got crystals and stuff, and she pays her in crystals. And the place is falling down. There's the water is full of gunk, and she's desperately trying to make wallpaper paste to put on this wallpaper up, and because of the quality of the water, it's not staying up, and she's just desperately trying to sort of make something of this house, and almost everywhere she does, she's just thwarted by the people there and the house itself. And then this character called Cosmos turns up, who's Paul Kay, who is this like completely over the top hippie character who he's been on a journey, and he's all talking about this. He sets his tent up in the garden, and she is overjoyed when she finds out that he's a carpenter. His skills are, he can make things, and he can fix things. She's like, oh my God, you can help me fix the house up. So she shows him her plans for what she wants the house to look like, and then he basically the next day she walks into the hallway, and all the floorboards have been taken up.
Right. And
she goes outside and Cosmos has made this boat for Elias. And it's like, what are you doing? Why have you made a boat for him? You're supposed to be helping me put the house together, not taking it apart.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not going to spoil it. Again, it's weird. It's beautifully animated. I wouldn't say it's listed as a comedy. There are some genuinely funny moments in it, and it's not horror, but it is very fucking creepy. The first story in particular is very fucking weird, and the second one, the endings of these stories, it's got a sort of almost like a Tales of the Unexpected sort of vibe to it. It has that sort of weird and outer limitsy. What's real, what's not real.
Yeah.
Is what's happening really what's happening? But it's beautifully animated. The voice cast is doing a bang up job. I particularly liked Jarvis Cocker as this developer. I thought he was hilarious. As things get worse for him. It's really good. I would really recommend it if you want to see something sort of like weird and brilliantly animated. It's a nice little thing. Yeah, it's listed as a TV series for some reason, but it's put together as a movie. So, yeah. Maybe it was going to be released in 3 parts. I don't know.
Yeah.
I quite happily watch more of it if they come up with more stories for this house.
Hmm.
There are lots of themes, that go through these stories that I mean, if I talk about them too much, I'll spoil, you know, some of the stories. But it's themes of greed or moving on, and anxieties and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of really interesting themes in each of the stories. And as I said, it's just a beautifully done little movie. I really I can't recommend it highly enough.
Wow, there we go. I have heard my friend did say like the first episode of the house is like one of the creepiest animations I've ever seen.
Yeah,
That's all I've heard about it until you
yeah,
mentioned it today. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. It looks fun, and the animation looks gorgeous. It really
yeah. It's
does.
beautiful. It's really, really, really good.
Yeah, it looks really
Really well
cool.
done.
So I think you got one more.
I have. I have also seen The Boys from County Hell.
Yes, the boys from County Hell.
So this basically, I think it was supposed to come out in 2020, but it came out last year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of those.
Yeah, I think it came out middle of last year. So it's been out. It has been out for a while.
Yeah.
But so this is it's directed by Chris Bra. It stars Jack Rowan, Nigel O'Neill, Louisa Hardland, Michael Hoch, and John Lynch. So we are in this small sort of village in the middle of Northern Ireland, which its claim to fame is that Bram Stoker once visited this place,
Right.
and like centuries ago, a vampire was killed here, and he's buried in underneath this cairn in the
Okay.
middle of the land. And this story of this vampire is where Bram Stoker took the inspiration for Dracula.
Right.
So you're introduced to Eugene and his mate William, who they seem to be wastrels who, they basically spend all their time drinking and not doing very much.
Yeah.
Eugene lives in this dilapidated house on his own because he seems to have this strange relationship with his father. His mother sort of seemed to died, and he's living in this house on his own. His father, who owns this building company, he wants him to become married. He doesn't want his son to live in this house anymore. But Eugene is like, no, my mum would want me to still live here, and it looks like he's trying to renovate the house, but just not doing a very good job of it.
Sure.
So that you see that these two tourists come in, and they take them to the cairn, telling them stories of the vampire and that, and then they
Right.
frighten the shit out of them, and they run off. So that basically there's going to be a motorway coming through the town, and it's going to go right through this cairn, and his dad is going. Eugene's dad is going to be in charge of the work.
Sure.
Not giving too much away, but I will say so. An accident occurs with William. They're out sort of in the field at night, sort of after a session, and he gets charged by this bull, and he gets impaled on the cairn.
Right.
And basically, while he's sort of dying, and his blood is dripping, you see the blood sort of pouring, moving along into the cairn. It's moving itself into the cairn. I mean, you do get a really great opening. There's a great opening actually with this two old couple who basically start bleeding, and then it goes so many like days earlier, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So then it basically, long story short, because I think it's fucking obvious, basically the monster is resurrected. So what I will say is, this is a proper Irish film. It's
awesome.
The humor is incredibly Irish. It's very, Father Teddy, or that sort of, that brilliant sort of sarcastic, sort of funny banter between the sort of characters. Claire and Eugene and SP. They're really quite funny, and the actual I can't remember what the actual monster's called. He's got I can't find where the name is, but he's really well done. I really like him. He's very Nosferatu-y looking, sort of.
I've always loved that design.
Yeah, he's a very emaciated, sort of Nosferatu-y looking creature. They set up their own rules for this creature, so it's you don't become a vampire from the bite. It's to do with the stones that are infected, which is a bit weird, but fine. The overall story, I think, is really good. I like what they did with this idea. I mean, I've seen and read many books that have this is the inspiration for Bram Stoker and all that.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you said that, like that's come up a lot before.
Yeah, it's that aspect is not new. What they do with the actual how the creature works is slightly different, which I quite liked. I don't think they looked into they did it enough.
Yeah,
they didn't look when they deal with in the end, because there's a big build up, and when the end comes, I'm not going to spoil it, but it did feel like, oh, they've dealt with it and that's it, sort of thing. It did feel a bit, oh, that's
sure,
a bit of disappointment. But the characters themselves, this sort of little group of sort of people that all have sort of kind of slight problems with each other, but not. There's, what the kid who dies, his dad's he's a mortician, and it's through his house that this thing's going to go as well. So he's so there's conflict with the kid ends up working for his dad on this site, sort of thing, and there's the conflict there, and then you've got the conflict between the father and son, because they're clearly estranged. But the dialogue is really funny. There's some really sort of ziggy one-liners and sort of comebacks and things. So the characters are great. It's a nice story. It's not a brilliantly new sort of vampire thing, but that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
The ending is too swift when it does come. They didn't like the way it works. I try not to bloody give anything away, but the way that this vampire works, I don't quite understand how they get away with doing what they do. If you see what I mean, I'm trying not to be vague about it. There seems to be a sort of a disconnect between what it does and how they continue to do what they're doing.
Right.
Which I think could have just done with a few little tweaks, just a few, little explanations as to why. I think there's a kind of thing that you could go with about Eugene's family history, but they don't go into it well enough to explain
right
how they could overcome this certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is genuinely funny, and it's well acted for the most part, and it's just a nice little sort of, it feels like it's pretty low budget, not terribly low budget, but it feels like it's a pretty low budget movie. and I think they do pretty well with what they have. Yeah, like I said, it's not the best vampire movie I've ever seen, but it is genuinely funny, and the effects are pretty good. So I would recommend it if
It looks like fun.
Yeah, if you want a nice little comedy horror, it does pretty well. It's not too bad. So yeah, give it a go. It's all right. It's yeah, enjoyable enough.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's fine. That's sometimes that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, it was good. I did enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all of the movies. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we bugger off?
Yeah, Meatloaf.
Meatloaf. Ah, man. I mean, I just like voice of one of the voices of my childhood. In terms of his musical performances, his collaborations, writing collaborations with Bat of Hell 1, Bat of Hell 2 as well. I pretty like 2. Some of the most iconic music.
Tim Steinman were just
incredible.
A marriage made in heaven. They were hell. If you prefer.
Or hell, yeah. They really were, and then surprisingly, a really good actor too.
Yeah.
And I've loved his film performances.
I saw this. I was watching this thing about his life and stuff, and there was this great moment though. So he was on stage, and he was answering questions from the audience, and one of the questions was, "How many movies have you made?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to paraphrase here what he says, but he basically said, I've been in 59 movies," and everybody cheered. And he said, "But wait," he says, 29 of those movies were fucking shit.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, there was a stage where it felt like he was just taking any old garbage, Oh
God, he was in some truly atrocious films.
Yeah, but he's in some great ones as well,
Yeah, I love him in The 51st State, and Fight Club and Wayne's World. He's just fantastic. And of course, Eddie in Rocky Horror was kind of where he started in the
that's his defining role, really, isn't it?
And that, I mean, he nearly didn't do that. He nearly walked out because.
Thank God he did, though.
Well, he was, he's from a religious family, and when he saw Tim Curry come out in full Frankenfurter gear, he was like, "No, I'm done. Fuck that shit." He like walked, and I think they sort of just, had to persuade him. It's like, no, it's it's this is what it is. It's okay. It's like this. It's like, and he came back, and thank God he did.
Yeah, I mean that's it's such a great performance.
Eddie is brilliant.
Yeah,
it's a small performance, but it was fantastic. But yes, I mean, I absolutely adore Bat Out of Hell. It's a fucking amazing.
Me too. I think it's wonderful.
It's one of the best albums ever fucking created. It really, genuinely is. And he was a genuinely great performer.
I'm not gonna, I think. Just some of those songs are so iconic. I mean, Objects in the Rearview Mirror. Oh, geez, that gives me goosebumps every time. And I will say, I mean, this
2 out of 3 Ain't Bad is a genuinely beautiful song.
Really is. And I will say, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, because I love Meatloaf. But as an aside, Meatloaf is like a DJ's best friend. Anytime you need to go to the toilet, you need a good 7 to 11 minute song. You got Meatloaf covered. It doesn't matter how long that queue is for the toilet. You're good.
I need to get to the toilet. Paradise by the dashboard.
That used to happen a lot, and probably will happen a lot as we come out of this pandemic. But I honestly, that was Meatloaf was on in the car as a kid all the time. I like Meatloaf was just an integral part of my childhood, and I still love his music to this day. I think it's just fantastic. But yeah, that was a depressing note to finish on. Any good news? No. Everything's awful. It's terrible. Matt,
just leaving out at the moment.
What are we going to do next week? What are we going to watch?
Well, I've had a few ideas, but I think I'm going to go with one for you. I think.
Oh, one for me. Go on.
Yeah. So shall we do the Devil Rides Out?
Oh, fuck yeah. One for me and also one for our listener base, which seems to love when we do old Hammer movies.
Yeah.
I'm well up for that. The Devil Rides Out is a terrific film, but we'll talk about it next week. Wonderful. That gives me a great excuse to watch that this weekend.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody. And we'll be back with The Devil Rides Out next week.